Okay, ready? This is on ultra hard. Too easy. Not only do Bileguts have probably the grossest name of any machine, they're also one of the toughest to hunt. Introduced with the Burning Shores DLC, these heavyweight frogs pack a punch, and they have a large variety of attacks that are difficult to deal with. Perhaps what makes them most difficult though is the fact that for such a large machine, they're incredibly agile, launching themselves at you across huge distances and constantly jumping back and forth while you're trying to nail a shot. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's been belly flopped to death, but don't worry, I've got the strategies to take Bileguts down easily and get those upgrade components like sack webbing. And yes, I'll also show you how to do that super easy instant kill method I teased at the start of the video. Everything you see here will be done on ultra hard difficulty, and to prove how effective these tactics are, I'll limit myself to only using purple gear. So get ready to master Bilegut hunting. So overall, my strategy for hunting Bileguts is similar to what I showed in my Fireclaw hunting guide. We're going to immobilize the Bilegut, freeze it, and then deal a bunch of damage using the sustained burst weapon technique on a bolt blaster. However, compared to other machines, there's a bit more work involved to pull this off with the Bilegut. Part of the problem is the fact that Bileguts are always surrounded by swarms of Stingspawn, which are very weak, but they can overwhelm you, so we definitely need to get them under control. Fortunately, Stingspawn are easy to kill by simply applying the shock state with any shock ammo. I prefer regular shock arrows on the Lightning Hunter bow because they're cheap and fast to reload, but Warrior bow shock light arrows and shock shredders work well too. We'll deal with the Stingspawn in a minute though. The very first thing we need to do is make sure we've got some smoke bombs ready to go. Next, we'll get up relatively close to the Bilegut and pop one. While it's confused, we can easily tie down the Bilegut using a Ropecaster like the Purple Elite or the new legendary tie that binds. Now, I know Ropecasters can be inconsistent. Sometimes it feels like the ropes just won't attach, so let me give you some important tips. First, you don't want to tap fire a Ropecaster. Instead, you need to draw your shots before releasing them to ensure they penetrate armor plates. Ropes will often not attach or even break when a machine is in the middle of a big movement animation, so try to release ropes when machines are relatively stationary. Also, keep in mind that ropes often won't work if Aloy is standing in or near water. The rope has to attach to the machine, but it also needs to anchor into the ground to apply the tie-down state, and it often won't do that in water, especially if Aloy is crouching or sliding. So it doesn't matter if the machine is in the water, but just make sure Aloy herself isn't standing in water. Sometimes even being near water is an issue. Now, Ropecasters draw pretty slowly, so to draw them more quickly, you can use the hidden quick draw mechanic, which allows you to draw weapons faster while sliding, falling, or on a mount. I discuss quick draw in more depth in my secret combat mechanics video linked below. Also, pro tip, I actually reset my skill points to disable the Ropecaster expert skill in the skill tree. This skill lets you tie down machines with a single rope as soon as they break free from the first set of ropes, but the follow-up tie downs only last about 8 seconds. I find it's easy enough to tie down machines repeatedly the normal way using a few ropes, so Ropecaster Expert can actually be a hindrance in my opinion. Anyway, depending on the tie down strength of your ropes, which in turn depends on the rarity and upgrade level of your Ropecaster, it will take between 2 and 4 ropes to immobilize the Bilegut. Once it's tied down, as long as it doesn't take any damage, we have a full 90 seconds before it breaks free. So now we have plenty of time to deal with those Stingspawn. We'll start clearing them out using shock arrows. Make sure to single one out in a swarm and build up the shock state. They'll explode and the blast will transfer the state to their friends nearby, killing them all after a short delay. And don't worry about avoiding their explosions, they won't hurt you. They can get you with their shock attacks though, and by lunging at you. The trick to avoiding both of these is to recognize the wind-up animation is quite long, so you need to wait longer than you think you should before dodging. Once we have all the Stingspawn cleared out, it's time to turn our attention back to the Bilegut. Locate an armor plate, I like this one on the back leg, and fire off frost arrows until you've built up the brittle state. Once you've got it frozen, step back a bit to get a good view of one of the egg launchers and pull out your bolt blaster. The egg launchers are a nice large target and offer a 1.6x damage multiplier. Plus, aiming here ensures we don't accidentally hit the sacks on the Bilegut's belly. Although, it's good to know you actually only need to keep one of them intact to get the sack webbing. Once you've lined up your shot, aim with L2 and hold down R1 to fire all your bolts with the sustained burst weapon technique. Here I'm using the purple Relentless Bolt Blaster, but a legendary one will work much better because the clip size is about 40% larger. If you have enough Valor, it's also smart to trigger the Ranged Master Valor Surge to double your damage. Now, as soon as you start the Sustain Burst, the damage will almost immediately degrade the tie down state and set the Bilegut free. But don't worry, because the Bolt Blaster deals damage in many smaller hits, it'll be stun locked for most or all of the sustained burst. As soon as you're out of bolts though, pop another Smoke Bomb and immediately tie the Bilegut down again. As you can probably guess, we're now going to repeat the exact same steps on the opposite side, targeting the other egg launcher. On most difficulties, unleashing these two sustain bursts, one on each egg launcher with the Bilegut frozen, will be more than enough to take it down. However, if you still need to do more damage, you can do a third where you target the components at its rear, or if it's still frozen when you're done with the sustain burst, you can sneak in a few shots with a sharp shot bow or warrior bow for extra damage. Okay, so let's check out my loadout and then we'll dive into the live demo. I'll be using the Nora Valiant outfit, which I like for its stamina and concentration perks. It also helps that it has decent acid resistance, which the regular Bileguts spew, and fire resistance, which is helpful against the Apex variant. I do have this outfit fully upgraded, but I'll leave the weave slots empty to make it a little weaker. The first bow we'll equip is the Lightning Hunter Bow for its shock arrows to use on the Stingspawn. We'll also be using the Seeker Hunter Bow, which will be key for its advanced frost arrows. I have mine loaded up with purple frost coils here, which you can easily obtain in a single playthrough before getting to the Burning Shores. Of course, the Sun Scourge would be better, but I want to show that you don't need the best gear. Notice that the Seeker Hunter Bow has a close range damage perk, as well as an overdraw damage perk, so we'll want to get up close and overdraw our shots to build up frost as fast as possible. As I mentioned, we might want a sharp shot bow for a bit of extra damage, so I'll grab the Delta for that, and I just have a few basic impact damage coils on it. But our main damage dealer will be the Relentless Bolt Blaster. I have some blue close range damage coils equipped to give us an extra boost, but you could also use a number of other coils. I'll link my new video on the best ways to coil every weapon down below if you want some ideas. Finally, we have the all-important Ropecaster, which in our case will be the purple elite with a couple of draw speed coils on it. Alright, let's hunt some frogs. Right, so we're going to do this at the dual Bilegut site. And I like to start at this northern campfire just because on this end there's a lot less water to run through, which makes things a little bit easier. And I'll show you I am on ultra hard, can't see the difficulty level, which means I'm on ultra hard. And my outfit is the Nora Valiant with no weaves on it. And you'll see all the weapons as we go here, but I'm going to make sure I have my smoke bombs ready to go in the bottom left there. And then I'll pull out my regular shock arrows on the Lightning Hunter Bow. And usually the Bilegut starts up here, and there's like 3 or 4 Stingspawn up here too, but they've moved down there since we've been talking a little bit. But there is always this Stingspawn in like pod form here. So we can take care of him right away. And when he wakes up, dodge his attack there. When he wakes up, usually the other machines in the area will be alerted, so here's a few more Stingspawn. And eventually the Bilegut will come up here. Or maybe not. We'll just pop the smoke bomb here. And then we can drop down, get a rope on him. And another rope. Dodge those tongue attacks. Okay, so we've got him roped down. And there's a few more Stingspawn here. We just woke up, so we'll take care of them. Remember, we have 90 seconds for the tie down, so we don't need to rush. Make sure we're all clear of Stingspawn so they're not bothering us. And now that we've cleared them out, I'm going to triple notch some frost arrows here. And we'll go for the plate on his back leg. Triple notch some more. Hit that plate again. And I'm going to quick swap between weapons here, which kind of cancels the reload animation, lets us fire off single shots faster. So we've got him frozen. I will highlight the egg launchers for us. And then I'm going to make sure we have our Bolt Blaster loaded. And we'll go for a sustained burst on that egg launcher. I triggered concentration, so it's a little easier for us to aim. Pop another smoke bomb right away. Get the ropes back on him. We have some more Stingspawn coming in. That should be fine. We've got them roped down again. We can deal with them easily. These explosions won't hurt you. but the attacks that they were about to do there would if you got hit by them. So we'll freeze him again. The other Bilegut's aware of us, but he's a little bit, we're kind of outside of his area, so he can't do much. He may do ranged attacks on us, in which case I would kind of use this Bilegut to shield myself from him. Maybe go for these front plates instead in that case. So we got him frozen again. Make sure we have our Bolt Blaster reloaded. And we have enough Valor now, so I'm going to trigger Ranged Master. Give ourselves another damage boost. And make sure we have a good angle on that egg launcher. Don't want to be too close, otherwise you can't aim upwards. Go for the Sustain Burst again. Now this may be enough to kill him, but I think we'll need a little bit more damage. Yeah, so I'm going to switch to my Sharp Shot Bow. And maybe we'll get an eye shot there. Nope. Focus shot. There's the eye. And he's down. And I'll just show you real quick that we got both sack webbings. You actually only need to keep one of the acid sacks intact to get both of those, which is pretty nice. Okay, that's it. As you guys can see, the key to this strategy is keeping the Bilegut immobilized with a combination of smoke bombs and ropes. As long as we keep it from hopping around, the Bilegut isn't too bad to deal with. Of course, not every fight is going to go perfectly, so you do need to know how to handle the Bilegut's various attacks. To deal with virtually all of them, we'll want to use a combination of sliding and dodging, both of which give us some invincibility frames, helping to avoid taking damage even with a large area of effect many of the Bilegut's attacks have. I cover the slide dodge in more depth in my secret combat mechanics video linked below. Most of the Bilegut's attacks also have extended animations. This means you'll often be tempted to dodge too early, so just like the Stingspawn, you'll want to train yourself to wait a little longer than you think you should before hitting dodge or starting to slide. So to deal with the vertical jump, for example, after the Bilegut launches into the air, wait a second or two before starting to slide dodge out of the way and you'll be able to avoid taking damage. The same applies when they launch horizontally to give you a big hug. You don't want to dodge directly away from those either. Instead, dodge to the side or even directly under. When they do their sweeping tongue attack, there will be a maximum of 3 swipes. Aloy can dodge at least 3 times before stumbling, so if you time your dodges correctly, you can dodge through these. The elemental ranged attacks are a little trickier. These typically come in sets of 4, so I recommend alternating between sliding and regular dodges to avoid stumbling. The adhesive bombs are best dealt with by simply avoiding getting too close to them so you don't trigger them. Of course, using our smoke bomb tie-down tactic is the best way to prevent the Bilegut from doing any of these attacks to begin with. And remember, I'm handicapping myself here with non-optimal gear on ultra hard. So if you use the same or better gear on a lower difficulty, you'll have a much easier time. Speaking of which, if you have it, I definitely recommend using the Sun Scourge to freeze the Bilegut faster, and it's especially useful against the Apex variant. For the Apex, I actually recommend using the same strategy we just covered, even though it's mildly resistant to frost. You can use Purge Water to remove their frost resistance first, but it's not really worth the time it takes to build up the drench state. I would just go for Frost right away. If you have enough copies of the new Elite Frost coils, either by doing multiple New Game Plus runs or using the Arena Duplication glitch, then the new Eye of the Storm Warrior Bow also works well for applying Frost. Loading it up with 5 of the Elite Frost coils gives it a 25% chance to trigger the state instantly, regardless of the machine's level of resistance. In fact, you'll be able to easily freeze even the most frost-resistant machines with this setup. Of course, it works with the Sun Scourge too, but the advanced arrows are much more expensive to craft. I'd also definitely recommend upgrading to a legendary Bolt Blaster if possible, as the 15 extra bolts make a huge difference in the amount of damage you can deal in a single sustained burst. If you don't like Bolt Blasters, you could also use a Warrior Bow with the Spread Shot weapon technique to deal a solid amount of damage, especially if you load it up with a critical hit chance or new Elite critical hits coils. A Sharp Shot Bow loaded with those coils works well too, but the single shots don't keep the Bilegut stun locked, so you'll be dealing with a hopper more often than you might like. But with a full set of crit coils on the legendary Sharp Shot Bow, it won't be hopping for long. Another way to immobilize the Bilegut is to use drill spikes to trigger knockdowns, which I explain all about in my damage types video. You do have to land the spike on the Bilegut's leg though, which is pretty difficult to do. If you're quick, you can sneak in a spike throw right after your sustain burst ends to continue dealing damage and build up to a knockdown. But instead of drill spikes, I definitely recommend picking up the legendary tie that binds Ropecaster in Fleet's End as soon as you can. Keep in mind that we can take some pretty simple steps to gain additional damage damage boosts that help us take the Bilegut down faster. For example, if we use a low health build by equipping the low health ranged weave or an outfit with this perk built in, we'll give ourselves 80% extra damage when below 50% health. It sounds risky, but you're actually quite safe so long as you have either the low health defense perk or weave equipped as well. Purposely damage yourself to get below 50% health before starting the fight and you'll pump out a bunch more damage. You can take this a step further by calling in your mount to get the 20% mounted archer bonus too. So that's my recommended strategy for hunting Bileguts the normal way, but what about that instant kill method I showed at the beginning? Well, that works by combining the Chain Burst Valor Surge with some interesting mechanics of Stingspawn. See, Stingspawn die a little differently than other machines, or at least they can. As we saw earlier, they'll explode when the shocked state is applied to them after a short delay, but that explosive death actually occurs with pretty much any element. The only one it won't work with is Berserk, which kind of makes sense because it's not really an element, but it's easy to pull off with Frost, Fire, Purge Water, Acid, Plasma, and even Adhesive. Build up any of these states and after a few seconds the Stingspawn explodes and dies. With the Chain Burst Valor Surge active, the death damage is dealt to any nearby enemies, including the Bilegut. So, to instant kill a Bilegut, first trigger Chain Burst, then make sure there's at least one Stingspawn nearby and hit it with any elemental ammo except Shock to build up the corresponding state. Then simply let the Stingspawn explode and its death will chain to the Bilegut and any other machines in the vicinity. If you're having trouble hitting the Stingspawn, you can actually just hit the Bilegut with the elemental ammo and the buildup will chain to the nearby Stingspawn. Then when they die, the death damage will chain back to the Bilegut. Plus, the damage dealt to the Bilegut will scale with how many Stingspawn you can get to explode at the same time, and for some reason the damage is increased if you're on 30 FPS resolution mode instead of 60 FPS performance mode. It's kinda crazy, and almost definitely not intended behavior, especially since it appears Gorilla fixed this from working with Shock in patch 1.24. But as of patch 1.25, it still works with all other elements except Berserk, and it's a lot of fun, so definitely give it a try. If it gets patched out, I'll update the pinned comment below this video. Alright guys, those are all my tips for mastering Bilegut hunting. If you found this video helpful or learned something new, leaving a like would be much appreciated. And if you have a Bilegut hunting tip, definitely share it with everyone in a comment down below. I'll also have more videos like my secret combat mechanics guide linked down there if you want to check them out. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.